Hey everyone, it's a Friday sports algorithm podcast. Let's get through it as fast as we can, even though we're going to talk about three different sports today. First, let's start off with MLS soccer. Then we'll get into WNBA games for Friday night, the 16th, even though the soccer that we're talking about is on Saturday, 17th, right here. And then we'll talk about baseball. So let's get to it. Soccer. What do we need to know? Updated the MLS algorithm. Didn't have a great week last week. It wasn't as good as the week before. If we look at what happened on the 10th and the 11th, it wasn't excellent. I mean, some things did happen. The Columbus team ended up winning. That was a big one that we had, and there was a draw in another game that we'd predicted. But it was 7-2-5 over Saturday and Sunday. After I refreshed this, it was actually, I think, a little worse before I had updated the stats. So it wasn't excellent, but okay. So as we look for Saturday, we see here that it's the Columbus Crew again. We have them beating New York FC. That tie no bet that is plus 135. So this is one where the algorithm is clearly picking them. Says that they're not getting enough street cred. So there's Columbus Crew. Other games are pretty consistent with the odds makers. Has our DC United here beating Real Salt Lake 2-1. Has the Revolution beating Orlando 2-1. Has a close game that goes the way of Sporting Kansas City against the Los Angeles Football Club. Has Nashville barely beating St. Louis City. They're heavily favored. And it has almost a draw, but it does barely favor the San Jose Earthquakes over Portland, but it's looking very close to a draw there at 1.5 each, basically. So that is soccer for Saturday. I think it's a short week for MLS, but those are the games for MLS. So now let's go over to WNBA. WNBA was a pretty good day yesterday. If you caught any of the video that I had published yesterday, I discussed some of the games, and basically everything happened except the Seattle Storm did not cover this point. Basically, the Las Vegas Aces ran over the Storm. So other than that, the picks were good. The Indiana Fever did beat a injured Chicago Sky, according to what the algorithm thought was going to happen based on injuries. So that was a good pick. And the Atlanta Dream upset Connecticut Sun at this plus 300 line. They were a little bit injured, so if you took them plus the points, you won. But they just flat out came back to win this game. So algorithm knowing something that the odds makers did not here, basically. So not bad. So let's look at Friday. 2 games, and a lot of things are injury related. So let's discuss that. Normally would have the Mercury beating the Mystics, believe it or not. But you have a big, huge question mark on whether or not BG, Brittany Griner, is playing. She's very tall and puts up a lot of points, but she's got a hip problem, and it sat her out last game. So when you look at the injuries, it has her down as a game time decision. When you look at this Phoenix Mercury game, don't know if she's going or not. That has a huge impact on that game. And if she's going, she's probably not going to be 100%. If she came out early last time, maybe resting again. So that's why the line is heavily in favor of the Washington Mystics. And this is a crazy, crazy line at plus 500, but it says that the Mystics will run over them if Brittany Griner's not playing. That might happen. So a tough game, but just an extremely tough game. The plus 11.5 points for Phoenix is distorted. That's where there's kind of a reasonable line here because of the injury to Griner. But just a tough game all around. This one's a little more interesting, which is the Sparks and the Lynx. Okay. So here you have heavy injuries on both teams, yet the odds makers are heavily favoring the Sparks. When you dig into the injuries there, you see that the Lynx injuries are here. They are people that are out. They are not just game time decisions. They are flat out. So that's Ariel Powers, Diamond Miller, and Jessica Shepard. That hurts their potential to win there. The Sparks players, some of those are game time decisions here. We open that up, we see that Jasmine Thomas and Shiny Agumike, a heavily impactful player. Foot injury might play, though. So those players might actually be in there. Given that, makes this also a really difficult game to play because some of these Sparks players may be playing injured. But there's also illnesses on both teams. It's just one of those things where tough game down here. lower margin, could go either way. So getting 5 points with the Lynx is a possibility, but both these games are actually really difficult to play here. When you see a lot of injuries, does it make you think more or less points? I think oftentimes it makes you think less points because a lot of the scoring players are out, like Brittany Griner out, but it also affects defense as well, whether or not they can play defense better. So it's one of those games where there's a lot of injuries here. It's probably going to be something like more of an under and difficult to pick. But that's your WNBA for Friday night. How about baseball? Baseball, bigger schedule. Baseball did not win all the games yesterday, but there was a lot of value looking through the matchup sheet and analyzing these game by game. So in order to do that, let's first take a look overall. Atlanta, Minnesota, the White Sox, big picks over 10% margin. Those lines are not good, except the White Sox line is good against Seattle. That's an underdog. So we're going to look in the matchup sheet and figure out why it is saying that. Then you have Angels, Philadelphia, St. Louis, the Dodgers with a double-A pitcher pitching for the Dodgers today, making his first start. Miami here in Washington. Yep. Should we go to the Washington game? No, the Nationals game tonight at 7. It might rain. Anyway, yeah, it might rain for that game. We've got thunderstorms coming in and out of the DC area. Then you've got Tampa Bay, Arizona. And these games are pretty close way down here. So big three, if you're one of the people who takes the top of the algorithms picks, even though they're not at great lines. And then the second wave goes down to about here. Angels, Philadelphia, St. Louis, Dodgers, Miami, and Tampa Bay. Now going matchup by matchup, because there's benefit to doing this. And that's why I say, if you want to purchase a copy of this algorithm and really dig into it yourself every day, on days that I don't do videos, on days that I don't follow this, you're going to gain some value from looking at this when you look at the distribution of stats and what's happening here. So, for example, all late games today, right? If we don't go to the Miami-Washington game, it's actually fairly close, but it does favor Miami on the road. Even though Sandy Alcantara is not pitching as good as he had pitched in previous years. He's really had an off year so far. Thinks that, there's going to be over 8.5 runs barely in this game. But, kind of consistent with the odds makers here. Is there anything to do with runs? It is predicting somewhat of an over. Okay. Do we have over under runs? Yeah. Over under 8.5. Barely. Barely, but yes. Right. Next, New York Yankees at the Red Sox. Domingo Germán going gives a slight edge to the Yankees at the underdog line here. Domingo Germán's stats are not bad, but the lineup factor for the Yankees is low. So the reason why this is happening is that you've got Judge out. I think there's another big player out today. So if these lineups are accurate, you can see that if the Yankees win this game, they may not put up as many runs as they would normally. Normally they put up 4.6 runs a game, but their lineup factor is hurting right now. So that's why you're getting this underdog line for the Yankees. Close game. Maybe the Yankees in an under. It's kind of what the algorithm's wanting to do there. So just interesting things to look at, who's playing and what kind of impact you're going to have in the game. St. Louis over the Mets. Miles Mikolas going against Tyler McGill. The St. Louis lineup factor is better tonight than the Mets. This is a reasonable line, so it does favor St. Louis. Colorado and Atlanta. So this is the number one pick of the day, is Atlanta putting up a ton of runs. Dinelson Lamet has an ERA of 10. So it's wanting to push a lot of runs in the favor of Atlanta. So similar to last night's game where Atlanta wins and scores a lot of runs, that's what it's wanting to do here for this game. So that's good to know. Toronto and Texas. Texas comes off a bunch of losses to the Angels. Now it's Toronto. Says Toronto. That doesn't know, actually. This game's really, really close in both directions because Gavin Gausman's a good pitcher, but so is Martin Perez, even though his ERA is a little higher. So very, 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 very close game. A game that Texas can win at this reasonable line, if you think about it that way. It barely gives the edge to Texas when it comes to margin, even though it thinks their predicted score is not in alignment with that. So really close game down there. Angels over Kansas City. That's a number 4 pick of the day. Pretty strong. Sandoval. Brady Singer's ERA is terrible. His whip is bad. Both these pitchers, you're supposed to expect some runs in this game. Even though the lineup factors are not great, the pitching is not good either. So could be one of those situations where Shohei Ohtani continues to hit more home runs like he did last night. Good game for Shohei last night. He outdid the algorithm, that's for sure. So wants to see some runs in this Angel game and thinks that the Angels win. Pittsburgh and Milwaukee, thinks Milwaukee can pull this off with Julio Teheran, who's only 1-2, but he has a really low ERA and WHIP. That's good. And thinks that they beat Rich Hill. Rich Hill for Pittsburgh. So this is a barely here for Milwaukee and a low scoring game apparently that Milwaukee wins. Detroit and Minnesota. This is one there. Minnesota popped off to a big lead last night, yet did not hold it, and Detroit came back to win. Thinks that Minnesota will win here. Pretty good pitching from Joe Ryan. Tyler Alexander, good whip, but bad ERA. Interesting. And only 1.7 innings per. No, is that true? So I guess they're pulling Tyler Anderson early. Maybe they have a different primary pitcher that ends up going for Detroit. It's a good question. Something to look into further. But it does say Minnesota does it, but the line is not great. So keep that in mind. Cincinnati and Houston. Cincinnati and Houston, you've got limited stats for Andrew Abbott, and he's got a 0 ERA. So that's what's barely giving the edge to Cincinnati here. Lineup factor for Houston's a little better than it was last night with the projected lineups for tonight. So maybe somebody's coming back from injury potentially. It's a tough game to read because of the 0 ERA for Abbott, although we don't wait that much on ERA. Interesting. So it says that score-wise, Cincinnati can win, but not margin-wise. So this is just an extremely tough game to play, and keep that in mind that it doesn't really know who's going to win this game. It's going both ways. Philly and Oakland. Of course, it's saying Philadelphia at -130. JP Sears has a better ERA than Taijuan Walker, but the Phillies have more hitting. So look for a rough ERA for Oakland's team ERA. They did lose the last 2 games of that series to Tampa Bay over the past week. Philly's been hot against Arizona. Thinks Philadelphia can win this game. Honestly, -130 is not that bad of a line for a team against Oakland. So it does have Philly as the 5th pick of the day up there. Tampa Bay and San Diego. Thinks Tampa Bay can do this with Shane McClanahan going. Against Yu Darvish, expect a good matchup here. Thinks an under, thinks Tampa Bay. Cleveland and Arizona. It's almost done here. Arizona barely in a 5-3 type game with Zach Gallen going. Even lineup factors. Thinks Arizona can do this against Cleveland. Then you have this White Sox game, Kopech against Brian Wu. Only 6 innings pitched, but he got lit up. So this is one of those where the White Sox might get off to a lead, kind of like last night, even though they blew it to the Dodgers. They might get off to the lead due to the fact that they're up against Brian Wu. So White Sox in the first 5 innings is probably a better pick than the White Sox to win overall, given that pitch-up matchup is lopsided in favor of the White Sox. And that's where that underdog line comes into play. San Francisco and the Dodgers has the Dodgers winning about 5-3 with Emmett Sheehan going. Now that is a double-A pitcher though. So we're using his double-A stats. They are very good, but they are double-A. So take that with what you will. Dodgers have an offense. They do have a better lineup factor. So maybe they have to out-hit San Francisco. If this guy does get hit, we shall see. So those are the sports, everybody. Lot to go over there. Enjoy your Friday of sports. May all your picks be winning. And yeah, enjoy a big Friday and Saturday of sports, soccer, WNBA, and baseball this time of year in the summer. Good luck. May all your picks be winning.